Oh, Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every wreck. The prize we sought is won.
You're listening to Walter Houston recite the words of Walt Whitman in a Decca recording from 1947. And you're on the soundbeat. Whitman published his famous elegy to Abraham Lincoln in Sequel to Drum Taps, an 1865 pamphlet containing 18 poems about the American Civil War, as well as When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed. Who said self-publishing doesn't work?
Oh, Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung. For you the bugle trills. For you bouquets and ribboned wreaths. For you the shores are crowding. For you they call, the swaying mass, their eager faces turning.
If you are going to publish your work on your own, you've got to have artistic and editorial vision. Whitman kept revising the poem, even after publication, and even corrected newspaper editors for using earlier versions. See his hand-scrawled notes and revisions right now at soundbeat.org.
The captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still.
Soundbeat is produced at the Belfer Audio Archive, Syracuse University Libraries. I'm Brett Barry.
Off the Record with Bill Best on KAKU 88.5 FM Kahului, Maui, the voice of Maui.
Aloha, this is Bill Best once again on KAKU 88.5 FM. Trying to make my sound system work here, and I probably got it. No, it's all set up and hooked in. Oh, well. So much for the the music. I try to make it professional, but, sometimes things don't quite work out. So, yeah, that's how things. And for some reason, I can't hear much of anything else either, other than my own voice. You're there, though. Bobby D is right here in the studio, Bobby D. Best. And, here comes Tony Midnight to save the day. No, I'm on auxiliary 2 for some reason, and I raised it up, but got nothing happening.
Volume on your
I can
laptop?
barely hear it.
What about the volume on your laptop?
Oh, that might help. The volume on my laptop is where? There. Little teeny tiny thing. Huh. You're right. Somehow it got turned down. Isn't this interesting, folks? This is live radio. And it's good to be with you. I've never had that real problem before. I've had other problems, but the volume being down, I don't know why that would be. I'm the only one who uses this machine. Anyway, that's what you get with machines. I personally am analog retentive, and I'm proud of it. Give me a pencil, I'm happy. Computers and cell phones, not so much. We're going to talk with an actual libertarian, ladies and gentlemen, here in the studio. We have Pat Brock. Welcome, Pat.
All right. Thank you for having me, Bill.
Yeah, it's good to have you in the studio. You guys are having an event tomorrow with Larry Sharp, and the topic is, what is a libertarian?
Yes.
And I thought I'd get a jump on the whole thing, and we'll find out before the meeting and talk about it, because I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with the libertarian philosophies, approaches to the whole political thing. And a lot of people are frankly getting a little tired of the Democrats and the Republicans and the two-party system. So in a few minutes, we will talk more seriously about those things. But I wanted to alert a few people about some upcoming events and the amazing and very precocious talents of Teresa Skinner's Suzuki Violin School will again create smiles, shivers, and inspiration. The student age range is 4 to adult, and your entire family, what and who that might be, will be certain to come away with a warm heart and a major cute fix. I don't know who wrote this, But this is happening on Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Makawao Union Church. You might want to get there early. This one fills up fast, and they're asking a donation. And children 12 and 18, children 18 and under, no charge, with an adult. So that would be a wonderful experience happening again at the Makawao Union Church on Saturday, 7 p.m. And Sunday, it's the big event at the MAC, the Maui Arts and Cultural Center's 25th anniversary party, a free celebration of community, and that's 4 till 8:30 p.m. at the A&B Amphitheater at the MAC, with 2 free performances by Strange Fruit from Australia with the Spheres. This looks really fascinating. The performances will be 6:15 and 8:15, and free admission and cake, too.
Free cake.
Free cake. That's Sunday at the MAC in the A&B Amphitheater, 4 to 8:30 p.m. with 2 shows. Again, the Spheres, 6:15 and 8:15. You don't want to miss that. And what else is happening? Let's just
While you're looking, I'm going to
skip
thank
through.
Maui Toyota for sponsoring us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Maui Toyota. KAKU's 17th annual Mulligans on the Blue charity golf tournament is coming up, and that is Sunday, November 30th at the Wailea Blue Course. It's time to tee up for the Hungry in South Maui. Visit halekaukau.org for more information and registration. 808-875-8754. They feed so many people here on the Valley Isle. Again, Maui Humane Society really needs foster homes for dogs. If you're interested, check out their website, mauihumanesociety.org. You can visit between 11 and 6 daily at their facility right off Veterans Highway, or call 877-3680, extension 3, and open your heart and home to a foster dog.
You can see pictures of the dogs online.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, you
And
choose.
I know they put little notices on the they're not called cages, but I guess they are called
Yeah.
cages.
Kennels?
I hate to kennels. Yeah, that's a more pleasant word. I hate to say they're in cages, but they are kind of are. Yeah. Pat Brock, thank you for again for coming in.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill.
It's good to have you in the studio to do some explaining about the Libertarians, because we hear about the Libertarians, but they're not part of the whole debate thing, and they can't sit in on Democratic debates. They're not even invited, as far as I can tell. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it's a separate political party. In fact, it's the 3rd largest and fastest growing political party in the United States.
And how would you equate the Libertarians between Democrats and Republicans? Because they all seem so extreme now. Both parties just seem way out.
Well, libertarians believe in freedom, basically, liberty, and so they believe in social freedom and economic freedom. You know. So it's kind of a hybrid, I guess you could say, maybe the best of the 2 major parties. At least that's what we believe.
So kind of conservative, kind of liberal in some ways, and some
fiscally
others?
conservative and socially liberal.
And socially liberal.
Yeah.
So if a libertarian becomes president, do we still have to pay taxes?
I would hope they would be a lot less.
A lot less. Well, you've already you mentioned before we went on the air that you've run for Congress.
Yes.
And how did that work out?
I don't recall. I think it was like 1.4% of the vote I got for the 2nd district.
But that represents quite a number of people, though.
Yeah, maybe 2,000 or something
still,
like that. Yeah. That was a while ago. That was 2010.
2010. And what does it cost to run for Congress? Is that...
I think it's $25.
That's it?
Something like that. Or maybe that's the signatures. Anyway, it isn't very much
Really?
to file for.
So then to
nomination
become
papers.
a president, though, you need millions of dollars. I understand Trump's got $500 million in his war chest.
Yeah. Well, let's see. In 2016, the Libertarian Party nominee was Gary Johnson, and I don't remember what his war chest was, but he got about 1.4 million votes, the most that a Libertarian has gotten so far.
Yeah.
But I think it only represented like 2% of the electorate. But we're making progress slowly.
You've got an event coming up tomorrow. People are interested to find out more about libertarians. You've been running this in the newspaper. Larry Sharp, former Libertarian Party candidate for governor of New York, will speak about why less government is the best way to help people prosper. And what does that mean, less government? Because government is such a part of everything, and I mean, we
That's the
need
problem.
roads and infrastructure, and yet those, in many cases, are kind of put to the back burner.
Well, but at least as far as infrastructure is concerned, I was reading something that the federal government owns something like less than 9% of the nation's infrastructure. Actually, depending on what you want to consider infrastructure, most of it's privately owned. You know, people building business buildings
Sure, right.
and all that sort of thing. So I'm not sure how much we need the government to get involved in building infrastructure. Obviously, roads and highways are a problem because there's a legal aspect to it. I mean, somebody has to be able to acquire the land, you know, and create through rights of way. But some people believe it could be done privately. There's a lot of toll highways and toll roads. Of course, sometimes they rely on eminent domain to force property owners to give up their land for rights of way.
Well, I know that the Golden Gate Bridge was going to have a temporary toll years and way before I was even born. I think they set up the toll on the bridge, and it never stopped.
Yeah.
Once you set up a toll, it never stops. It's always going to be, people are going to say, well, you know, we're making pretty good money at that toll. Why don't we just keep it going? People are used to throwing a few coins in the can for the cause. So.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be true of what government does. It's like they make a law and then you can't ever seem to unmake it.
Yeah.
So we keep accumulating them, and then they become. We have all this gauntlet that we have to run through for almost any activity now. Apparently, it's like insane to try to start a business because there's all kinds of bureaucracies and regulations that have to be satisfied.
Oh, yeah,
And
especially here. And, you know, it's kind of frustrating for people who come here and want to set up some sort of business, and they find a lot of obstructions, but for I think, a good reason in some cases, and to keep people from doing the backroom deals that have been, you know, somewhat prevalent in Hawaii for some time.
I have to say, I went to the permit building department recently, and it was so much better than the old days.
Really?
Yeah, everybody was helpful and efficient, and they weren't lording over me with their power as in old days. We've been here a long time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
boy, I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't you want people to have driver's license so you know that they're able to drive?
Well, of course, anybody who's going to build some kind of infrastructure, they want to be able to manage how it's being used.
Sure.
So, but there's no reason why we couldn't have private highways and have those highways patrolled and the drivers licensed by the people who, you know, construct the roadways.
Well, that sounds like you might need a lot of licenses then just to drive across the country, because everybody is along the way has got their own little private strip of road.
Possibly, but, you know, like with anything, there could be a lot of reciprocity. Like if you qualify for one company's rules that would be honored by another, that you wouldn't have to prove over and over again that you could drive.
That sounds a little confusing. I don't know.
What about privatizing prisons?
Well, yeah. The problem that I see with government privatizing is it's almost like the government's doing it themselves because they choose a corporation to do that. There's no competition. I mean, I guess there is for the contract initially, but once a corporation wins the contract to run a prison, then they're in charge. So, but possibly it could work better or work well if there was a constant, you had to rebid every 5 years or something like that, like a lot of other government contracts. I don't know if they do it that way, but,
No, I'm unfamiliar as well, but I know we have problems right here at MCCC, and we've had problems there for some time. And the overcrowding is not is not a separate thing from most prisons. Most prisons, it seems to me, are overcrowded. I mean, you put 4 people in a small room.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? 4 criminal type people or people for whatever reason, anybody really, and you're going to have problems. So
I don't know, and it seems like the criminal justice system is organized around retribution too, rather than restitution.
Yeah.
Rather, it's more punishing, about punishing people than it is to try to stop them from doing what they're doing and get them out the door and into society again functionally.
I don't know if you saw that Representative Omar, the young woman that's in Congress now, and she got a death threat, and they arrested the threatener, and she wrote to the judge and said, please be lenient. This person does not need jail time or a huge fine, but needs to, learn how to be in society, and we don't need to punish him and make him bitter, make him resentful.
To some degree, that jails are criminal factories because if they learn anything in there, they learn it from their fellow inmates rather than how to, get a job and be productive.
Yeah, that's truly unfortunate.
So do you think libraries should remain free and run by the government? And
I think libraries could be privately managed. I mean, they are in a lot of places anyway.
Seems like you're kind of on the side of privatization in many ways.
Yeah. Well, and whenever government gets involved in something, the government's a monopoly. I mean, I think it's always funny that the government is in charge of busting trusts and stuff like that, but the government is like the biggest trust there is. They're in charge of, whatever the legislatures say they're in charge of. So any area that they get into stifles any kind of private business endeavors in that area.
so what would be the advantage of having a private library over a public library?
Well, that we aren't forced to pay for it if it's not something that we want. I mean,
but to use it, it would cost, right?
I don't know. I mean, you could say that bookstores are private libraries. I mean, people can go in there and read, and if they like the book and want to carry it out, then they pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to a library where they don't pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if the book's lost or something like that, then the taxpayers have to replace it. And
well, they charge the borrower if something's lost.
Well, yeah, if you can collect it once they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, museums used to be free too, but they're no longer free.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're not privatized. But of course, they need funding too.
Well, there's a lot of private museums. Isn't it Bishop Museum?
Right.
That's
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. So what made you become a libertarian?
I like freedom.
Yeah.
I like to be able to choose how I live my own life, make my own choices and stuff like that.
So how are you not free? Let's say now, how are your freedoms being infringed upon?
Well, like once again, going back to businesses, if you want to start a business, I want to fix things or whatever it is, then you got to have a business license.
Yeah.
You got to cut the government in on whatever you make, and it's like there's a fee for being alive and eating and surviving.
Yeah. We were talking about prisons, and some people have said that for the cost of one prisoner, what it costs to house them and feed them and everything, you could just as easily give them a living wage before the crime was committed. And some people have tried this out, the idea of a living wage, just giving it to every citizen. Everyone gets an allotment of money.
Yeah.
And from there, they can do what they want. That seems like the ultimate freedom. If you've
well, unless you're the guy that's got to, pull up the money and give it to the other guy, so that he has a living wage.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of this stuff has come about because of so much restrictiveness in creating your own job or getting a job. I mean, I'm self-employed and I don't want to hire anybody because the paperwork is maddening. You've got to provide insurance for them. You've got to they have to be guaranteed so many hours and health care and you got to pay unemployment on them. It's like, so why do it? I mean, government is increasingly stifling business in this country, and I think that what made America great was the ability to be people to say, I want to do this, and just start doing it, building a business and creating a service without having to check in with the community. Is it okay if I do this,
Yeah. Well, in some cases that works, but in other cases there will be those who will pay their workers way less. And many, of course, are not getting a living wage now, especially here on the Valley Isle.
Well, with a lot of businesses, though, then there'd be a lot of competition. If they don't like their employer, there should be lots of others to choose from.
Yeah, and there are here. I mean, as far as low-paying jobs.
Yeah.
What is your employment?
I'm a pool and spa repairman.
Oh, okay.
And I got my own van, and I have my own customer base, and I don't even advertise anymore. People hear about me and tell their friends, and people call me.
Good.
So your feeling is that you're not your brother's keeper. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Is that the general feeling of the libertarians?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you an atheist?
I happen to be. A lot of libertarians aren't. Because we all believe in freedom of religion or freedom from religion, or however you want to, whatever you choose to believe in or exercise. It's not my business what you believe in.
Yeah. I go by the old adage, it's none of your business. My grandmother used to say that, and you don't hear people say that anymore. In fact, it seems like everything's everybody's business. Especially if you're online and you're doing all that business with the
social media.
Yeah.
So the reason that I am a progressive is because I don't feel good about living in a country where 1/5 of the people are in poverty.
Yeah, well, and a lot of poverty, I think, and a lot of libertarians think, is government imposed. And I was just reading recently that during right after World War II, there were a lot of government housing projects built, and African Americans were excluded.
Right.
So now a lot of Caucasian people or European descent have the advantage of having a family estate of some sort that the government helped them get, that a lot of people in the black community didn't have that advantage. So part of the poverty there was, that the government, I think, illegally favored one section of the population over another, rather than it being a level playing field where everyone could compete based on their own ability and desires,
Right, so they have nothing to pass on to their
Yeah.
progeny, and not only that, but they get incarcerated all the time. So their nephew gets in jail, and they have to help him out financially, and it's a lot harder to get ahead.
And part of the problem there is the prohibition of drugs has contributed to that. I mean, as soon as you make a law against something, then anybody who wants it is going to pay a lot of money for it. So anything that is prohibited becomes very lucrative if you're willing to take the risks.
Right. And it's unfortunate too that people are punished, as we mentioned, for addictions, for their substance abuse, even for. I mean, I understand if somebody gets in a car and drives 90 miles an hour and crashes because they're stoned or drunk.
Yeah.
But for somebody to
Stoners don't drive 90 miles an hour.
That's right. but for somebody to be punished for ingesting an herb, for instance, or
my girlfriend's nephew was put in jail because he tried to commit suicide. That's against the law.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't commit suicide?
No.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I guess that's true. I never thought about it before, fortunately.
I have a T-shirt that a libertarian friend of mine made that says, "You own your own body."
Yeah.
Which the government doesn't like. They want to be able to tell you what you can do with it. The prohibitions and, of course, the laws against suicide.
Yeah, and abortion too, which is a big topic. And as far as I'm concerned, that should be between the wife, the
father,
the mother, and the father, and the doctor.
Yeah.
Period. Or other family members, but why it's anybody else's business, I have no idea. I just don't understand.
The right likes to have control over women is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I've been unclear where that comes from. I guess it comes from the Bible, "Thou shalt not kill," and then it's kind of grown out of that.
In Nazi Germany, they were tightly controlling women's bodies. It's not a new thing.
No. And again, it should only be between the woman and her doctor and the husband, if he's involved. And, there are a lot of issues out there that I really feel are none of our business.
Yeah.
That it should be between a couple of different people. And so...
Well, yeah, and it's... abortion's unfortunate, but I mean, the worst case scenario, I think, is like putting a police officer between, you and your doctor.
Right. Yeah. So we have a special gathering. This is coming up on Friday at the Maui Country Club, 48 Nonohe Place in Paia, and the admission is free, and you can find out more about libertarianism.
Yeah.
Like I say, a lot of people are getting a little tired of government as usual, and it'd be nice to have more choices, for one thing, instead of be either Democrat or Republican. That's like, should I choose the right side of my brain or the left? I can't. How about the whole brain?
Yeah.
So this is free. Let's see. Maui Country Club, Paia, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is happening tomorrow.
Usually there's a lunch involved too, and I've been involved in some other meetings that have been held there, like for the Grassroots Institute, which is also a libertarian leaning organization. and usually it costs $10. So if it's, I won't promise that there'll be food, but I'm pretty sure there will be. So anybody who says there's no free lunch, this is the exception.
There you go. Yeah, you get a free lunch with the Libertarians. So tell me about Libertarians in general. I mean, we don't know anything about Larry Sharp, former Libertarian Party candidate for governor of New York. And he's just visiting, so he's not running for anything locally.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about him, but apparently he's a real go-getter.
Yeah.
He's showing a lot of folks how to organize and conduct political campaigns so that we can hopefully start getting some libertarians elected to office.
Yeah.
I mean, libertarians have had a lot of influence on the way laws have been changing in the recent years. Libertarian Party was founded in Colorado in 1971, so it's 48 years old today.
Today?
Well, I mean, no, not today, but I'm sorry, this year.
That would be a real coincidence to have you on the show, too, but okay.
By a guy named David Nolan, and they ran their first candidates for president and vice president in 1972. The first presidential candidate was John Hospers. He was gay.
Interesting, really.
And his vice presidential candidate was Tony Nathan, a woman. So I think she's the first woman to run for either vice president or president. And she was also the first woman to get an electoral vote, because apparently a Republican, I think it was from Vermont, jumped the fence or whatever it was and gave an electoral vote to the Libertarian ticket. So,
Are there any libertarians that have served?
we have a lot of mayors or several anyway, and county commissioners and that sort of thing. A lot of libertarians have been getting elected to small office like railroad commissioner or whatever it is in a lot of states. But
And what changes have they wrought?
well, like a lot of deregulation, trying to allow business people to run their businesses more efficiently with less encumbrances from the government, and which enhances the economy. If you can reduce restrictions and let more people get involved, then you have more businesses, you have more competition, you have more choices for the products and services you want, and the prices should go down because people are trying to underbid one another. So the more businesses you have, the better, there's more choices you have.
Right. Well, we've seen fewer choices every year here on Maui, and more vacant stores, and they continue to put in these they're not like malls. They're kind of like a sprawl of big stores, Lowe's.
Strip malls, you mean?
Yeah, well, it's sort of a strip mall, but not really. I mean, the new facilities they're putting up over at Target and around there, I don't know. I feel like what we really need is a nice mall. We've got the Queen Kaahumanu Center, which is more like a mall than the Maui Mall. But just to have a bunch of buildings off in the North 40 there, to me, I get lost. I get lost easily. I got lost in Kahului once, and I couldn't find my way out. I had to call a cab. No, I didn't really, but it felt that way for a while as I'm driving. How do you get out of this place? But Maui is a unique place, indeed. It's different from most parts of the United States. For one thing, it has the Hawaiian culture. Yeah. Of course, you go to other states and other parts of the country, and you'll find indigenous cultures throughout. But I don't think their cultures are as pervasive as it is here in Hawaii. There's a great pride among the Hawaiian people, and as we've seen with the Mauna Kea protests and that kind of thing. But there's an example of how would you deal with that? You want everybody to have freedom, but some people don't want others to have the freedom to build where they want.
Yeah.
This seems like a difficult situation.
Well, libertarians
I mean,
believe
it is difficult. Yeah.
Libertarians believe in private property as being crucial to, freedom, because, if you can't have a private, secure place for yourself and your stuff, then, you don't have much freedom.
Right.
So everyone should be able to manage their own space. So then the problem comes down to property rights. That my question is who owns Mauna Kea, Apparently, I guess it's owned by the state of Hawaii, ceded to it by, the territory of, or I guess, taken over
Right. So
from the kingdom and ceded to the state by the federal government when Hawaii became a state in 1959.
Right, but they didn't go about it in a very diplomatic way. I mean, they took land. There was land that was taken from people, and that's part of the reason why we have protests, and not just over Mauna Kea, but over some of the wind farms that are going up. People feel that these are sacred lands, and it's when you're dealing with so-called sacred lands and legal ownership of those lands, I don't see how you can rectify that.
I have to say that I'm unclear on the property rights regarding Mauna Kea. Once again, I assume that if it was kingdom territory and not someone's private property, then whatever the kingdom had became the state's property. So I would assume that whatever the state government chooses to do with it would be legal, I mean,
but if it isn't right, I mean, we talk about Pono in the islands. They don't talk about Pono anywhere else, as far as I can tell. And that's do the right thing. Well, what is the right thing?
I know, that's always bothered me. Who gets to define what the right thing is?
Yeah.
Well, my understanding of when there was that explosion of in Texas, it was because there was some, I don't know if it was a factory or they had things blow up, and it came up because they were unregulated.
Right.
And isn't that one thing that happens when you let people do whatever they want?
Well, not necessarily. I don't think any business is like aiming to blow up their infrastructure. I mean, you wouldn't think it would be an intended
Right, it's not intended,
thing.
but if they're not...
and just because there are laws and regulations doesn't mean planes don't come down and facilities don't blow up. I mean, just because you make a law against it, wave the legislative wand, doesn't mean it's not going to happen anymore.
But still, you need regulations when it comes to people's safety and building, even building permits, and,
I would assume that the companies who made the great investment to build this place would try to, create rules and enforce them that preserve their investment and don't kill their valuable workers. I mean, there's no profit in that. In fact, the Libertarian Party considers itself the party of peace and prosperity, because we believe that if you do business, you won't fight. It's not cost effective. It's not good business practice to either kill your suppliers or your customers. So libertarians believe that if we had open worldwide commerce, there'd be a lot less wars.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and yet we have Trump and his tariffs going off with China, and sometimes I think maybe that's not such a bad thing, because we've got some real tough customers in the world running these different countries, from Putin to Beijing to so many countries are just like I hate to say corrupt, but there's a lot of criminal activity going on that we don't want to see that happen with the U.S. So it's no reason. It's a good reason why we have the whole Trump situation going on right now.
And all this seems to be like a turf war between national leaders. I mean, I don't think most of this advantages the average guy, either here or in China, very much at all. We just want to do business. I want to make a product and make a good living, and so the borders restrict the flow of association and commerce and stuff like that. It's the more we could open up our borders, let people come in, let them leave again, and we can go places and associate and make new friends, new business partners.
So you wouldn't be putting up walls down along the border. You just let people come in and
I guess it would be kind of nice to keep track of them, know who's coming in and where they might be if we need to find them and stuff like that. But I don't
that's
see
regulation now.
I don't see any reason to keep them out.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's some kind of a mindset that those people outside are different than we are, except that pretty much everybody in this country came from someplace else.
That's
anyway.
right. Yeah.
Their ancestors did. So it's like, how are these people worse than my ancestors or yours?
Right.
So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I was really disappointed. I wasn't a great supporter of President Obama, but I thought his loosening of travel restrictions with Cuba was a really good idea.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you set up a embargo, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, blockade or embargo on Cuba or whatever it is, and you, in order to get rid of the demagogues that are in charge of it, Castro and like that, and after 60 years that doesn't work, then maybe it's time to try something else,
Well, I think we're still trying to punish them for what they did with those missiles back in the day.
And the confiscation of the tobacco farms from American owners and stuff like that. But
So
maybe it's time to get over that.
yeah, I think so too.
So let me ask you, go back to living in a country where a fifth of the people are poor. You kind of explained why that happened, but what would you do about it now?
Well, it'd give more freedom. Like one of the problems, like we have all these homeless people and stuff like that. I read a little article from the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian-leaning institute in Washington, D.C., and they calculated that 40% of housing costs goes to satisfying government regulations, and so it's like you got some poor guy living in a kiawe thicket and stuff like that, but he can't have a house if it doesn't have a smoke detector in it,
Yeah.
It's like, so he's better off sleeping on thorns. It doesn't make any sense after a point.
Oh, that's true. So we're talking with Pat Brock, who you ran for Congress at one point.
Yes.
You're not a candidate now.
No.
For anything. Are you thinking about getting involved?
Well, it's still a long shot, and it always was, that a libertarian can get elected, facing up against the Republicans and the Democrats, because they have, they're entrenched and they have all the financial support.
How do you compare yourself to the Green Party? I think you're both for legalization of marijuana, for example, right?
Oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention that the Libertarian Party has been advocating for legalization of marijuana like almost since the beginning.
Right.
And the party and a lot of other libertarians would like to take credit for pushing the whole society in that direction.
Yeah.
Apparently, even though we haven't gotten a lot of candidates elected, laws have changed, like been in favor of gay marriage. The Libertarian Party is like, why is it my business who you marry and who you make love to? I don't care. Just you can ask me if I want to join, but if I don't, it's okay what you do. I'm sorry.
They're comparing to the Green Party.
Well, once again, they want to use the heavy-handed power of government, which has a gun behind everything. I mean, you make a law. If you don't do it, then the police will take their arms and to you and try to make you comply. So they want to use that to solve a lot of problems. Whereas libertarians believe in voluntary compliance, that, that the carrot's better than the stick.
Yeah. So if you were doing a superhero movie, the superheroes would be more into deliberations and diplomacy, and because it always amuses me, superhero movies, they always solve everything with a punch.
Yeah.
It always ends up with punching. Like, what are they teaching kids? This is the solution to any problems you have. You just punch your opponent until they agree that you're right and they're wrong.
Yeah. Or at least you're subdued and you can't resist anymore.
Right. So, it's, in a way, it's a different time. In a way, we're still stuck with the same kinds of problems we've had ever since I was a little kid. I never thought that I would grow up and be in my 70s and there would still be a nuclear threat.
Yeah.
Now, we don't talk about it like we did back in the day when it was duck and cover time.
But there's more nuclear countries now than ever.
Yeah. And
So what's keeping them from blowing us up?
Yeah, it's amazing they haven't done so already.
Well, it's the MAD thing, the mutually. It doesn't make good sense to start a nuclear war. And, I mean, once again, you'll kill your suppliers and your customers if you're trying to live in this world peacefully.
So as long as there's good commerce going on, there's less chance that there's going to be war. And
I think so,
kind of
anyway.
thing. But it also has a lot to do with land. It always has. Even here in Hawaii, way back in the day, it's been struggles over land and what part of the property you should own. I personally lived in a commune for a decade.
Really? Where was that?
In San Francisco and the Bay Area. And we practiced holding all things common.
Yeah.
And we had people coming into our group with whole households of stuff.
Yeah.
Washers, dryers, cars, houses. And together it was like we were wealthy. We had so much just by sharing.
Yeah.
Just by sharing. And I just keep thinking, for especially older people who are looking to maybe get into some sort of facility, if there was something like that where they were truly sharing. But a lot of people, they can't share very well. They don't know how to share. They haven't had the practice.
Yeah.
And that's where, you've got to have groups and organizations who are not necessarily in the mainstream that can offer different ideas. And that's why we wanted to have you on as a libertarian, a representative of the Libertarian Party, because we hear about libertarians, but we don't really know enough about them.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was wondering, is that commune, does it still exist?
Fragments of it do.
Yeah.
But for over 10 years, we had restaurants. We were a real active. We weren't just a bunch of hippies sitting around smoking bongs, But we had restaurants. We had a clothing store. We had a shop on Front Street here called Far Outfits years ago.
Oh, that was here. I looked up your bio on the KAKU page, and I saw that Far Outfits. I like that word.
He named it. He's good at naming things.
Oh, that's yours?
Well, that was the name I came up with, and I was we did a lot of hand-painted clothing, airbrushing, but also hand-painting, and eventually we got into creating our own style, I guess you could say. We had outfits and things that we were making here, and we had a restaurant here called Cafe Paradise years ago.
Where was that?
That was right across from Gump's on Front Street in a little alley. This was back in the mid-'70s, and it was all natural foods. We always specialized in good, healthy, organic. Well, not so much organic back in the day because they're
hard to find.
Yeah, it was hard. There wasn't a lot of organic. Organic wasn't a big popular word at the time.
I ate at that restaurant. I probably saw you then, before we knew each other.
Well, I was wondering, I got nothing against communes. I don't think any libertarian does, if you want to join, but I don't think anybody should be forced into one necessarily.
No.
So, but there always seems to be a problem, and I just maybe whether or not you experience that is some people end up doing most of the work and other people end up being freeloaders and how'd that work?
Well, that would be true if we didn't have actual businesses to maintain. And again, we weren't drawing wages. We were just sharing what we had.
Yeah.
And nobody was above anybody else. So.
But I mean, was there resentment? I mean, like the people were working really hard, and then some guy sitting in the corner just
there was,
smoking a cigarette.
I experienced a resentment towards the band. We had a band, and some people didn't like the fact that they had to work in the restaurant, and we got to travel around playing music.
Okay.
But very often we were also involved with the restaurants too. So and we all had shifts. We all had responsibilities.
And speaking of laissez-faire, there were some instances with men having inappropriate relations with children.
Well, I'd heard about that. I did not know about that at the time, but
It happened on Maui too with the hippies.
Well,
anything goes. You can do whatever you want. Of course, the children could do what they wanted.
But that wasn't part of the philosophy.
No, it wasn't sanctioned.
And stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
It's still going.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast.
We have to restart the whole thing and shut down on us.
What? What's happening? What's happening now?
It's not happening now.
All right. I don't know what that... You missed out on some weird stuff they were working on in the next room, I guess. Anyway, what were we saying? Oh, the communal thing. I don't see many people living communally anymore, and I've seen a lot of different kinds of communes, which are very similar to what you're talking about. We were a combination of a kind of a university, really. I mean, we had what we called schools of experience, and people could be in the restaurant school of experience or musical or whatever, usually a combination of everything. But it was responsibility that was a key to our all getting along and working together. And, of course, there are always people who come and go who can't live that way.
Yeah.
That's a lifestyle that not everybody is very adept at.
I think the reason communes haven't been more popular or more successful is I think people like to feel their own power,
Sure.
I mean, I look at my bank account and I know I did that,
Yeah.
And I can monitor my own personal power by, my income, for one thing,
Right.
and have a sense of what I can do in the world, and I think if you're in a commune, you don't have a sense of your own personal worth, or strength. And
I think you do when you have a creative outlet, whether it's music or art or whatever it is, carving something. And we had a lot of creative people involved with the group, so that helped. And we also had creative outlets like the restaurants and the clothing facets, so that really helped a lot. And
because you had a spiritual leader.
Well, yeah, we had a spiritual leader, and he was probably the hardest working guy in the whole crew. So that was, for anybody who would say, "Oh, well, I have to work so hard, and so and so doesn't work very hard." Well, when the main guy is working harder than anybody, you kind of don't say anything about it, And everybody, I think everybody likes to cooperate as people with each other, and everybody likes to do creative things, whatever their specific talents are. And so that really, really helps. So you've got to have the right group. Now, we were a group that lived together for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And had kids, and they started growing up and everything. So, and some people came, and some people left. I remember there was a whole group of people who got up one day and said, "Oh, we're not going to live like this anymore," and they all went off to New Mexico. They all jumped in,
as a group
in their vans. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of them, and not just part of our group, but other groups as well. It became like a caravan off to New Mexico.
Created another commune.
Well, it was a different kind of commune,
Yeah.
and again, there were so many back in the day. I know there are still communes here, and in Kauai, for instance, you had the Taylor Camp, which was a kind of commune.
I think I heard about that.
Kind of free-spirited.
There's a movie about it.
Yeah, so I think it's a possibility for people, especially I think older people who are looking for a kind of a bond between others, and maybe they're not so attached to the material world as they used to be. But we had things. I had clothing, and I could go shopping and do that sort of thing. I wasn't.
And I assume there was part of that space that was considered yours. And,
sure.
And unviolable, or should be anyway. That nobody should be able to rustle through your personal.
No, it wasn't
that stuff like that.
It wasn't that kind of thing where, well, you've got a beautiful bowl, I should have that too.
Yeah.
It wasn't the old communist model of how things should be.
Well, I suppose if there was enough wealth to go around, then there wasn't that. It's like, I can have my own bowl, I don't need yours,
Well, that's the advantage of living communally with the right people, and everybody brings what they have, and talents especially.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, you've got a little business, different kind of business going here, and a different kind of business going there. So I think it's a great idea, but having little or nothing to do with libertarians necessarily. I probably lived with a libertarian or two back in the communal days. But.
Well, I see a relationship here. I mean, the government, the United States is a big commune to some extent.
Yeah.
And when you're born into it, you're in it whether you want to be in it or not. But the commune you were in, I mean, you chose to be in it. And if you didn't want to be in it, you could leave.
Yeah.
So
that's the freedom. We only have a minute or so. I can't believe time has flown, as it often does on this show. But I want to remind people, if you're interested in libertarianism, you can join Larry Sharp, former Libertarian Party candidate for governor of New York. And that is tomorrow, and probably several other libertarians in the room at the time.
And also we're having a big function on Saturday is our state convention.
Oh, really?
Libertarian Party of Hawaii convention.
I did not know. Where's that going to be?
Ala Moana Hotel.
Oh, Ala Moana.
I'm not sure what room, but anybody can come if they want to. They want $20 to get into the door, and mostly that covers the room. The venue, and there'll be a what do they call it? The small breakfast.
So tomorrow, it's 11:30 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon, the Maui Country Club, 48 Nonohe Place in Paia. The admission is free. If you need more information, you can email joewillkent@gmail.com.
This is Friday.
Yes, this is Friday. We're talking about.
Yeah, tomorrow, Friday.
Not Saturday, because the show reruns on Friday. Okay, so that's 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., Maui Country Club. And thank you so much, Pat, for coming in.
Thank you,
Pat
Bill.
Brock.
And by the way, I wanted to thank you. I used to listen to you on KAOI playing classic rock, and it's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Well, you should listen to me on Mana'o Radio Monday, Wednesday, and Friday midday from 10 till 2.
All right.
I'm Bill Best with Bobby D. Best. Thanks to
Maui Toyota.
And thank you for listening and watching on Facebook. This is Bill Best signing off. Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, this is Bill Best. My show Off the Record is brought to you by Maui Toyota, located at 320 Hana Highway in Kahului. New and used sales and service for Toyota, Scion, and more. For more information, call 808-877-2781 or go online at maui toyota.com. Off the Record is heard Tuesday and Thursday live at 11 a.m. on the Voice of Maui, KAKU 88.5 FM.
Aloha, I'm Amora St. John, host of Gutsy Women Radio. My show is made possible by Isa Inca Dance Studio, offering classes to enhance body, mind, and spirit. Isa teaches the sacred art of belly dance and the healing practice of Pilates. This talented, gusty woman also offers full moon and new moon meditations. For more information, go to isainca.com. Gutsy Women is heard Fridays at 11 a.m. on the Voice of Maui, KAKU 88.5 FM.
Maui's free speech station. KAKU 88.5 FM, Kahului, Maui. The Voice of Maui.